Welcome to DRJLT Economics. I'm Dr. Julian Tong. In today's episode, I want to talk about some of the mistakes that I think the Goldbugs are making. And by Goldbugs, I mean people who really like gold, of course. This is a follow-up to my episode on Bitcoin being the biggest threat that I think, in my judgment, to privacy. I encourage you to review that episode afterwards if you haven't done so yet. Today, I want to talk about the mistakes that Goldbugs are making and I want to link these two episodes together because while a lot of the criticism that the Goldbugs are throwing at Bitcoin are valid, this does not mean that everything that they say and everything that they reason are, in my judgment at least, correct or reasonable. I take three main arguments that I think that we should be very wary of. The first one is that because the Federal Reserve and because the Federal Reserve of the United States, of course, has been printing money ad nauseum, people will lose faith in fiat currency. The second mistake is that after the collapse of the US dollar as the world's reserve currency, gold will be remonetized. And thirdly, that a value or price, at least, of gold can be guesstimated based on either a full or a fractional backing of gold of the world's major currencies. So let us just delve into each of these three arguments or conjectures, let's say. And I want to present my views on these conjectures and why I think they are wrong. Of course, most of the other things that the Goldbugs say, I think actually are correct, and I will give some mitigating arguments at the end. So first things first, Goldbugs like to say that people will lose faith in fiat currency. This seems to be a very strong argument indeed, because the Federal Reserve Bank has been really crazy, irresponsible, reckless, and in the words of Ray Dalio, basically cash is trash. Right? He is correct, of course. I think, of course, but at the same time, he wants to say more. He can't say it on public television. He certainly is. I think probably he lost money last year because of the money printing and the completely reckless interventions of the Federal Reserve. So he was quite angry, and rightfully so. And he probably is able to see that the Federal Reserve, after this current crisis, has locked itself into basically a corner, pushed itself into a cornered itself, let's say, or locked itself in a box where there is actually no way out except breaking the system. I have discussed this in 4 different scenarios in an earlier video episode. I encourage you to review that episode as well. It is about the possibilities of inflation and deflation in the coming crisis, and why I think both could be part of the features of this crisis. Basically, it's stagnation. Now, I think, of course, people are going to lose faith in the Federal Reserve, and at the same time, because the US dollar has been the reserve currency, because of the reckless actions of the Federal Reserve in the last decade, and actually a little bit more than a decade already. a lot of foreign central banks have had to also impose very loose monetary policies in response. I think the European Union, for example, really suffered the most, to be honest, even though a lot of people would think, me included, that the European Union is some sort of a poodle of the US. It is actually it has, in my judgment, suffered the most, because I think in the very beginning, Europe's response was the responsible one, which was some sort of austerity, which was to overcome the problems that had come after the financial crisis of 2007-2008. But then, because the US has been printing money, and that money is because it is the reserve currency, the United States basically was exporting inflation to across the world globally and also into Europe. So Europe suffered from austerity, but did not had the benefit of from basically the correction. So it had to respond in doing QE. So it suffered from austerity, while at the same time it also suffers now from reckless monetary policies. So as a result, the European Union hardly ever recovered before this new crisis. And with this new crisis, I think European Union probably is not going to go into austerity, and so it's going to continue to print money, and it's going to suffer the consequences as well. But of course, it's better than having austerity plus printing money. That's just the worst combination, which the Europeans suffered. They probably don't. Most Europeans probably do not realize this, but that is basically, in my judgment, why Europe was the worst in terms of recovery from the previous crisis. Now, so it is true that a lot of central banks have been printing a lot of money, and as a result, it is possible that a lot of people will lose faith in a lot of the currencies that are in circulation today, and they would result to a lot of the alternatives to bartering, such as they could really be silver, and gold can actually play a role. And of course, I think farmland, probably the producers, these things are probably going to be very, very much solid currencies, right? These, I think, have value. But to suggest that people are going to lose faith completely in fiat currency is to basically make the assumption that people are able, that the majority of the public are able to distinguish money from fiat, to distinguish money. So to tell fiat currency and real currency apart, right? So solid money, real money, hard currency, and fiat currency, paper money. People are not going to be able to tell them apart. That's an assumption, I think, that is wrong. People will just see that some currencies are failing, so they want to go into other currencies. So they probably want to go into things like the Swiss franc, right, the Singapore dollar, and things like that, right? And they will use some other means means of transaction, right? The barter, as I mentioned, but it could also be even cryptocurrencies, which I think is a bit ridiculous because it's equally valueless as fiat currency. There is no difference, except that it is not backed by tax money. So I don't think people would lose faith in fiat currency. They will lose faith in the US dollar, but people will not be able to tell that it is fiat currency is the problem. And this is a fundamental argument, I think, that upon which two other arguments that Goldbugs are making. And I think that is part of the reason why those two arguments, the other two arguments, also are weak. But there are more reasons to do that. There are more reasons that they are weak. So let's go to the second mistake that Goldbugs are making, which is that they believe that gold will be remonetized with either, and become the world's reserve currency, things like that. Now, I do not personally think that gold will be remonetized. I think gold will certainly hold its value, but it will not be remonetized because the fiat experiment, though not very successful in the end, meaning that it will end in the total collapse of the US dollar, it does not mean that the temptation of a fiat currency can be withheld. I think a lot of the governments, the power that be, will be attempted to implement some other fiat-based system. And the reason is very, very simple. With fiat currencies, and without gold backing, they will be able to print as they want. And that is a great power. That is a great power that people I think will find very difficult to resist. Of course, there is also a sound, I probably need to put it in quotation marks, but sound argument, which is that with fiat currency, it is possible to expand and contract the money supply based on the needs of a country's economy, and therefore it is better to it can help a country to recover from economic crisis faster, while at the same time, when a country's economy overheats, it is also possible or easier to cool down the economy without causing just ballooning bubbles that are dangerous once it gets too big. Of course, these are the arguments. These were probably the arguments. I think they actually were the exact arguments made for the Federal Reserve, for the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, I think. So there is that. Those are arguments. You can believe them. You don't have to. They are actually very sound arguments. The problem is that once people gain the power to print money, once they realize that cooling down an overheating economy is not great for their own profits, then people never try to cool down the economy, to turn the lever the other way. They always try to turn the lever one way to expand the monetary supply, and this causes a lot of problems. But nevertheless, I think the power is too great for a lot of people to resist. So I think gold will not be remonetized. And thirdly, there is another argument that I think Goldbugs are making, I think, wrong, which is to guesstimate the price of gold based on some sort of a full or fractional backing of the world's economy. Now, of course, this is usually in conjunction with not just the arguments that people will lose faith in fiat currency, but also that gold will be remonetized and become the world's reserve currency. on those grounds, then one can argue that the price of gold can be estimated as a fraction or maybe 100% of the world's economy. Now, it could be annual economy or it could be total economy, however you want to calculate it. There are basically infinite ways that you can justify the price of a commodity. But I want to say that not only are the first two arguments wrong, which means that this third argument is simply baseless, but also that gold price simply cannot be simply. I don't think it's gonna be even related to some sort of reserve currency status, and thereby to consider gold being a form of to basically consider estimating the value of gold, the price of gold based on the world's economy is basically a non sequitur. And the reason I want to say this is that based on my argument that a lot of countries will not be able to resist the temptation to continue with fiat currencies, what will happen is that I think there will be a new sort of exchange mechanism. In my personal view, I think it's going to be some sort of exchange mechanism that is going to replace a single reserve currency, the role that the US dollar has been playing. Because the idea that there needs to be a single reserve currency is not necessarily it's not true. The world needs trade, and trade needs to happen with some sort of ways of accounting. And this does not mean that there needs to be a single currency that is issued by a single nation or single country that plays this role. There can be an exchange mechanism, bilateral ones, that or multilateral ones that can serve in this function quite well without the need of a reserve currency. So the trading partners would then just hold each other's currencies in its place. So if this is the case, then estimating the price of gold based on the world's economy or the world's trade would be a non sequitur. So these are my arguments why I think the Goldbugs are making these three mistakes. Right. So in short, it is that number one, people will lose faith in the US dollar, but they will not lose faith in fiat currency because the public doesn't know what a fiat currency is. How can they lose faith in it? Secondly, I think gold will not be remonetized because the temptation to have fiat currencies is too great. And thirdly, I don't think it's wise to guesstimate the price of US dollars based on, the price of gold based on the world's economy or the world's trade or however you want to put it, because I think there will, in place of a single reserve currency, there will be some sort of an exchange mechanism, multilateral ones most likely, that will play the role. And so if there is not even a single reserve currency, then no currency can be used to estimate there is no chance for gold to be that reserve currency, right? And thereby guesstimating its price based on it being the reserve currency is wrong. having said all these things, I want to just at the very end say a bit of praise for gold. I want to say that even though gold is not going to become the Messiah, gold is not the Messiah, gold is not going to save the world, gold is not going to solve all the problems, gold is not Bitcoin. Gold is not cryptocurrency. Gold is a real commodity. And I believe that when people lose faith in major fiat currencies today, such as the US dollar, the price of gold denominated in these fiat currencies will rise, I think dramatically. Depending on how much inflation there is in the US dollar, in the euro, we will see the gold price rise a bit more than that. So if the dollar loses 90% of its value, I expect the gold price to go up more than 10 times. And when denominated in US dollar. That is a little bit of leveraging, I think, effect, right? And I want to, so that is when it comes to gold price. And when it comes to the physical qualities, I want to just make sure that I'm not, just to make it clear that I'm not dissing gold, right? Because gold is a commodity with some irreplaceable physical qualities. It is an element. It is an element that is more than that has more atoms than iron, and it's not radioactive. So if you look at the periodic table, you will see that all the all the elements up until iron can be produced or manufactured from just nuclear fusion. But gold being above it, it cannot come from a nuclear fusion. It will only come from supernova, which is when a big star dies and finally explodes. That is the only place where gold can actually come into being. And so gold, well, it is possible that there are some gold reserves on Earth that we have not, not possible, that is a certainty, that there are a lot of gold reserves that we have not found, and there are some gold mines that we have not mined. All that being true, gold is not something that can just appear. It must already exist. It is different from things like aluminum or whatever, which actually we can manufacture. It is possible to manufacture from nuclear fusion. Or probably we cannot do it today, but I think it is feasible that once we have a good control of nuclear fusion, that is something that can be done. But nuclear fusion cannot make gold, so that makes it something that is rare. And you look at one of the heavy metals, all those heavy metals have these qualities. But of course, gold is then also part of noble metals, so it doesn't tarnish, and it is the only noble metal with a beautiful shine. So and it has a lot of thermal qualities and physical qualities that make it useful. So, right. And finally, I want to say one thing is that because gold does not tarnish and gold has these physical qualities, what happens is that even when our sun blows up, which inevitably will happen, actually our sun is too small, probably will not blow up, but you know what I mean. When our sun dies, gold that's on Earth today will still be here. Gold, that is not something that you can say about Bitcoin. Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies, they are, I think, I think currently perfectly just a bubble. I think the blockchain technology absolutely is a great thing. It certainly has a lot of use cases, but I hope it's not going to become where currency is based, money is based. I fear that perhaps a lot of countries are looking to use a blockchain to make their own currencies, because this will make it much more traceable, and they can monitor us much better. But in that case, blockchain and the cryptocurrencies are used in a way that harms us. It is not some great quality. It does not solve any problem. And when people say Bitcoin solves this, I hope those accounts are bots. I hope they are not real humans, because I really hope people, even though I think will not be able to tell that it is fiat currency, it's the fiat currency system that are causing all the destruction in their societies. I hope they at least can tell that when blockchain is used as the foundation of money, they will have no privacy. Okay, thank you very much for listening. I wish you a great day.